Hello everyone, nubkeks here and welcome back to Nub Raids. In today's video, I'm going to go over my top 10 picks for best crowd control champions in Raid Shadow Legends. Well, as of time of recording anyway, I'm sure we're going to get some ludicrously strong ones later on this year. I mean, we'll see. We can update it then and see how crazy power creep has got. But yeah, let's dive into it. There's actually quite a few champions who fall under crowd control. Indeed, it's sort of a made-up term, but in my mind, it's one of like the four, arguably one of the three pillars in the game, where you've got damage dealers, you've got support champions, and I would break support champions into more defensive and more offensive. So defensive are reviving, healing, shielding, strengthen, that sort of thing. Offensive is like, placing debuffs like decreased defense and weaken and all that sort of stuff. But I think control is one of the biggest archetypes of character in the game. And like I said, there's nothing in game that actually sort of clearly delineates what is a control or not. You have these roles like attack, defense, HP, and support. Conveniently, all the top four are each of those, but they don't really correspond to anything particularly useful. Like support is just kind of weird. I mean, HP, attack, and defense is usually what their damage type scales off. Not always though, but it doesn't typically say much about what the champions actually do often. So yeah, anyway, that's sort of a rant aside. What is control though, Nub? Or at least what is my take on control? And the way I see it is this. I've got this article, and in fact we'll be doing more of these top 10 videos. I hope you enjoy them, and I'm trying to like give some more info around them as well, as opposed to just listing off the champs. But we've got these articles on hellhades.com. I've been writing a chunk of them. Others are writing others. But yeah, I see control, hard crowd control. I think this is the stuff that typically would be pretty like certain that, yeah, that's control. Like, so stun is the most obvious option, right? You stun a character, they miss their turn, they don't get cooldown reduction at the start of their turn. It is like sort of definitively control. Then you've got stuff that's a bit murkier. So, well, what about fear or true fear? Like, okay, that can make you fully miss a turn, but it can also fail. I would say it is hard crowd control. It's just a bit unreliable. What about block active skills? Block active skills is a really interesting debuff that prevents you from using active skills. You have to be using your default skill. It's much like a provoke. But they still get to choose who to target. They still get to control their turn. It's just limited. Does that count as hard crowd control? Like, is that full? I count it as yes. And I think because it prevents people from metamorphing, mythicals from metamorphing, I do count it up there. We got petrification, freeze, provoke, sleep being probably the worst one, sheep as well. And we got soft crowd control. I think these are things which in some situations can be as good or even better than hard crowd control, but might also be worse. I think taunt would be the weakest version. This is the buff you put on yourself. You force enemy single target attacks to target your taunted champion, but if they have an AoE attack, they can just fire off the AoE attack and hit your whole team, right? So it's quite weak, but against single target champions, it can be incredibly effective, forcing them to attack your specific champion. But, it's not as good as provoke per se, but you can have higher uptime often. I think Enfeeble, very strong, very rare. Not many champions can do it, but this forces enemies to land weak hits. That is insane. That really neuters any damage dealers. Neuters a lot of offensive debuffs and effects. And then, of course, increasing skill cooldowns. Similar to block active skills, this just increases skill cooldowns. Champions can still metamorph if they're mythicals, but it's probably the best form of crowd control in the game right now. It's not exactly hard crowd control. They still get their turn. They can metamorph. They can do stuff. But it goes through Mercurial gear. It goes past Total Guard. It goes through Stone Skin gear. And that's what's really made this so ridiculously strong, and why many of the best champions we're going to talk about are that. Then you've got other stuff, I think, that's sort of adjacent to it. Ones that are worth calling out: the Storm Call buff. This sort of triggers extra stuns. Fatigue can trigger sleep. Ensnare stops people getting turn meter, which is, I think, is sort of adjacent to crowd control. And you've got decreased turn meter as well, arguably decreased speed. They're sort of adjacent. If we consider crowd control to be things which stop your enemies having their turns or really limit what they can do at their turns, I think limiting the actual turns they get, sort of. Block passive skills, sort of adjacent. I think Seal and Master Seal, kind of like Enfeeble, can, by disabling gear sets and disabling, I think it's blessings now and relics. I think they've added that into I think they buffed Master Seal. that stuff can neuter damage dealers or potentially debuffers and stuff enough that they are significantly weaker. I wouldn't call these ones fully control, though. I think the turn meter stuff is similar, but yeah, it's not what exactly I'm going to be including on this list, but I think you easily could, to be honest. Yeah, so I think all this stuff could arguably be considered control. I think the hard crowd control, definitely. The soft crowd control, I think enfeeble and increase skill cooldown, I think that's actually fair enough. Taunt is a bit more questionable. The turn meter stuff is a little questionable, this stuff, but they're all very similar. You're doing a similar job. They're all some of the most important things in the game. Let's talk about the actual champions then. Let's go. Okay, so diving into the index, place your bets. I wonder if you're going to agree with me. I've got 1 rare, 2 epics, I think 5 legendaries, and 2 mythicals. Place your bets now. Guess who I'm going to pick. Will you guess them? Let's see. What about the rare champion? Who is the best control rare in the game? I think there's one without question that stands out to me, and that has to be Gnarlhorn. This guy is just insanely good. What a budget champion. What's he do? Very simple. 3-turn cooldown when booked, and he's a rare champion, so super easy to book. Provoke on all enemies for 1 turn on a 3-turn cooldown. What is really nice about this is because he's an affinity, right? But this is not an attack. So he can place this regardless of enemy affinity. It doesn't matter. He will place it 100% on any enemy. Whereas, let's say if this was a hit, he could easily weak hit a magic. I think it's a 35% chance, to weak hit. And then the provoke wouldn't place. So it would be very bad against magic affinity. But no, Gnarlhorn works really well against everything. His A3 gives him unkillable. Actually, not really that good, but you could keep him alive if the provoke damage coming in is too high. But often what you can do is simply disable this move, give him like a reflex set, and just have him spamming out this move with cooldown reduction. Very nice. One also really cool thing about him, his A1, you could actually not use his A2. You could use his A3 and A1 in a non-control sense against the Phantom Shogun. Phantom Shogun places Enfeeble on a champion, forces them to weak hit, and then he gets more stacks. But Gnarlhorn cannot weak hit with his A1, so he can be a cool Enfeeble tank for Phantom Shogun. Though obviously that's a super crit damage, no accuracy build. He won't work as a control champion. But what an amazing rare. This is easily a rare you could build 2 copies of for places like Doom Tower progression and stuff like that, and secret rooms. He can be insanely good. Next up, I think a pretty underrated epic and quite a different sort of champion, Ethlin the Golden. I'm calling him out. Not a champion I think most people will have predicted here, but I think he's insane. He's a hybrid, so he is a damage dealer first and a control champion second, but he's incredible at control. How does this work, or why does this work? Well, quite simply because he buffs himself with increased accuracy. So that really reduces his accuracy requirements. It lets you build him with good damage and speed and still have enough accuracy to do the job. Then he comes in with his A2, Void Affinity, so affinity neutral, again, massive. Block active skills for 2 turns. It's on a 4-turn cooldown, yes, but because he's getting an extra turn on his A3, it's effectively on a 3-turn. The second hit will place True Fear for a turn if they're not under block active skills. They should basically always be under block active skills, but it's sort of a backup. If they get a 3% resist, you'll get a True Fear quite possibly as well. But incredibly good. And then he's just doing some decent damage. He's ignoring defense against champions in waves. Cool. He's got an accuracy aura if you need even more accuracy. But yeah, versatile champion, just pumping out the damage, keeps himself alive on his A1. And yeah, self-buffing, so he's easy to build. And that Void Affinity, incredibly useful. Yeah, obviously he's a later addition to the game. He's a fairly recent champion release. So he certainly wasn't around while I was doing progression content. But my goodness, is he incredible. Next up then, Creodan the Blue. Amazing champion. Now, he will have affinity issues, and he's not going to have 100% chances to land his control, but he still just always impresses me with his actual in-game performance regardless. So he's coming in with Razor Hail. He's a freeze champion. Each hit a 65% chance to freeze. Double hitter. So yeah, let me work out. Hang on. Let me work it out. I can do it. Hang on. Okay, so I believe it's an 87.75% chance. So again, quite a decent chunk below 100, but still a good chance to land that freeze. Now, I'm not factoring in that they could resist it, so that would lower the chances a bit more. But still, it's really, really good. You could take a mastery that would increase his chance to land freeze as well. I don't know if you would necessarily want to, but it's a pretty reliable AoE free. Very, very good. You can obviously weak hit force any enemies as well, but then he has a triple hit, which can freeze on his A1 too. Fantastic. Then he's got an apothecary style A3. Increased speed, big version, and a turn meter boost. And then whenever he is landing freezes, he's gaining more turn meter. So he can really cycle through his turns very quickly, making your team faster, pumping out crowd control. Now, freeze has a special role in the game for Fire Knight hard difficulty. Fire Knight, you need to take down the shield with multi-hits. Guess who's got multi-hits? He's got a triple hit A1. Amazing. And then he's giving you speed and turn meter to keep on top of the Fire Knight just in general. But Fire Knight normal, you can use decreased turn meter effects as normal to stop the Fire Knight taking another turn and you kill him while the shield is down. For Fire Knight hard, only way to keep that shield down is with freeze. Enter Creodan the Blue, who's freezing the waves so you can get through the waves easily. And then, yeah, giving you that turn meter cycling, so turn cycling more accurately, so you can keep on top of the boss and pumping out freezes on everything. Fantastic for Fire Knight hard. He's just incredibly good. Like, he's genuinely, especially for Faction Wars hard, they've obviously improved some of the factions now, but my goodness, certainly when they first launched Faction Wars hard, it really stood out. Doing Sylvan Watchers with Creodan, I'm like, Creodan is just solo crowd controlling all these Faction Wars hard waves better than legendaries in half of the factions in the game. Like, the dude's insane. So yeah, he is, for me, an absolute top pick. Now, for the legendaries. First up, Armans the Magnificent. Ridiculous champion. It's such an interesting look, I think, into how Raid Shadow Legends works. He's got this amazing speed aura. He has the single target sheep, which is incredibly rare, and it can't be blocked, so he can sheep people through Stone Skin. Incredibly cool. Now, it can be blocked, unfortunately, by Total Guard. So, you know, I really think Raid has some issues, I think, with how they word things and whatnot. So, like, debuff cannot be blocked. I mean, you know, you'd be like, well, can't be blocked, right? Well, no. Again, it will be blocked, but only by some things and not by others. So, like, intercept buffs will block it. Wand of Submission can reflect it. I don't know. Like, I understand. It's a complicated game. It's hard to have things be clear in a small number of words, but I guess we could rant about that in another video about clarity of wording. But he's got that single target sheep. Very unique, very cool. But this move, Greatest Hits, is absolutely absurd. An AoE attack, so he does have to not weak hit for this to work, but it steals all turn meter of everyone and then stuns enemies as well. This is only on enemies that are not under sheep. It's just insane. So it's a 3-turn cooldown. Steal all their turn meter, steal it all, and stun them. So they have to get a full turn meter bar again and take a turn to remove the stun. And then they got to rebuild their entire turn meter bar a second time to get to an actual turn where they can do something. And this is a 3-turn cooldown, but because he's stealing all their turn meter, he's likely going to have another turn straight away, if not close to straight away, which effectively brings it down to more like a 2-turn cooldown. So a really fast Armans can very easily just keep chain crowd controlling an enemy team. He just steals all their turn meter, stuns them. They're trying to get back to their turn. They're finally almost ready to maybe get an actual turn. Uh-oh, Armans is faster, steals all your turn meter, stuns you again, and it's inescapable. There's nothing you can do. It's absolutely crazy. Why do I say, though, it's an interesting look into the meta? Well, with the Wand of Submission Relic, with Polymorph Blessings to an extent, certainly with Stone Skin being more common, Lightning Cage to prevent him from removing some buffs, and in a big way as well, Mercurial Gear and the Total Guard buff really cripples Armans. And funny enough, even though this is clearly is one of the most overtuned, overpowered abilities in the game, the way Plarium designs the game, that they've introduced all these really overtuned, overpowered things to counter it, like Wand of Submission and Mercurial Gear. The Armans is now, funny enough, in kind of an awkward spot, and you don't see him half as often as he was there originally. But certainly, at the time when he was released, he was a champion that drove many players to say, I'm quitting the game, or I'm at least quitting Arena because it's too frustrating to fight against Armans. On the flip side, you had players saying he's a free-to-play champion, he's giving... is a fusion, right? So many players could get him, and giving players a way to fight back against whales and krakens that you otherwise would have no chance against. It was certainly a divisive champion, no question. And it's interesting how the meta changes. Next up, I'm going to cover 2 dwarves back to back. Hilvi, the Rhyme Called, coming in for me here, first of all, and her partner Tormin. We'll mention both of them together because I think they're really interesting. But Hilvi has full buff removal and then a freeze, which is really, really cool on a 3-turn cooldown. So if enemies have block debuffs or stone skin, you've got a chance to remove them. Now, it might be prevented by lightning cage. Stone skin is a 50-50 to prevent removal. And so on. It might be protected, block debuffs if they got protection sets, whatever, but still, it gives you a consistent source of the freezes. I think she's really good, not purely because of this, right, but she's reviving your team and giving them some turn meter, block damage, increase speed. If nobody is dead, it's a big turn meter boost, speed in all battles aura. She also puts out burns and decreases enemy turn meter and steals a buff anytime anyone gets a freeze on the enemy team. So that's really cool as well, and makes her combine very well with other freeze champions and adds an extra level of control to those freezes. A1, you can see on her A2, her A1, she's calling in Tormin. On her A3, she's giving Tormin turn meter as well, so she turns Tormin into a crowd control machine. Let's look at Tormin. Incredible champ. He's probably most famous for this passive. It's a 30% chance to freeze an enemy whenever they receive a buff or have their turn meter filled. And this can happen up to twice per enemy turn, once per turn meter fill and once per buff. So you can get loads of chances to get these effects out. And he can just spam out, if an enemy team is unprepared, right? If they don't have block debuffs to stop this, or total guard or stone skin up, they could just get frozen and chain frozen and be in a really tough position. But yeah, he has a freeze chance on his A1. Hilvi's calling him in to do that. When an enemy is under freeze and burn and take damage from the burn, he instantly does this A1, and Hilvi is turning, adding burns on top of every freeze as well. He has an AoE provoke if enemies are not under freeze. And yeah, he's pretty sick. I think he's well worth calling out. For an unprepared enemy team, Tormin can just ruin their day. Very, very cool champion. Now we come to a time-limited champion, a champion who's been dominating the meta. Bayek, can't get him anymore. He's gone. As of the start of April 2026, you cannot get him. Maybe he'll return one day, who knows? But he is absurdly strong, so buffing your team with loads of buffs. Then he comes in with debuffs, but a provoke for 1 turn. But here's the thing, if a target is under 3 or more debuffs, it's a provoke for 2 turns. 2 turns of provoke. Incredibly rare. There's a few champions who can do it, but it's very, very rare. Bayek is one of the easiest ways to trigger it. Half of them are only against bosses. Umbral Enchantress, actually, shout out to her. She's an epic. She could have made this list, to be honest. She has provoke for 2 turns AoE, Void Affinity as an epic. Incredibly accessible. But it's got a long cooldown. She gives herself block active skills. Though you can stop it with total guard, because of course you can. Of course you can. But yeah, 2 turns of provoke. Very easy to achieve it in a lot of content. And that's insane. Locking out enemies, and this is on a 3-turn cooldown. It could be shorter in theory if you use this because it has an extra turn, though you probably do this one first and it doesn't actually end up really reducing the cooldown of this A2 all that much. But yeah, either which way, is a very short cooldown, very high uptime provoke in a lot of circumstances, which is insane. On top of he's bringing oodles of buffs and debuffs for your entire team. And then, of course, probably his most famous thing, he's got the less famous assassin passive, but it's pretty good. Makes him a very powerful damage dealer if you build him that way. But this, where allies cannot receive crits from enemies whose accuracy is equal to or lower than their own accuracy, essentially means if your team has got good accuracy and they've got nukers who've built low accuracy, which is pretty common, plenty of nukers don't build much accuracy, they really can't do much damage to your team at all. It's very difficult to deal with. So Bayek has been really dominating the meta, and they've released several crazy Void legendaries and mythicals that can crit regardless of anything now to sort of counter that whole gameplay thing. We're going to talk about one of them in the video. I'm sure you can probably guess who. Next up, our final legendary today. Let me know any that I've missed, because there's a load. There's so many. Let me know your favorite control champions, because there's so many varieties. But in my opinion, the strongest control legendary in the game, bar none, is Lord Entertainer Fabian. He's the community. He was the anniversary fusion for 2025. What does he do? Increasing skill cooldowns on enemies by 3 turns on a 4-turn cooldown. And he's got a chance to get an extra turn, though it's quite awkward to make it happen, certainly in PvP, where enemies will have protective buffs from like blessings mostly. kind of gets in the way of this. But yeah, increasing all enemy skills is such an incredible control effect. It's one of the few things that goes past Total Guard from the Mercurial set. It goes through Stone Skin. Obviously, mythicals are able to handle it. At least some mythicals are, because they can metamorph, but perhaps it's not strategically advantageous to metamorph. Perhaps it's a champion like Alaz, who at time of recording has gotten a very strong base form, but a pretty underwhelming alternate form. It doesn't really want to metamorph. But nonetheless, this is an incredible move. Well, surely that's enough to make him a top tier champion. Well, he's got more than that. He has a single target petrification, but then 2-turn True Fear on the whole enemy team. And whenever an enemy with Fear or True Fear successfully uses a skill, he just goes in and he petrifies them and tries to apply True Fear to the whole rest of the enemy team as well. So huge uptime on True Fear. He steals turn meter, steals it on his A1, and then whenever enemies are revived, he'll just put True Fear on them for free, just when they're revived all the time, because why not? And then, of course, should any of those True Fears or petrifications get reflected back by Wand of Submission relics, no problem. He automatically removes them for free at the start of his turn. In fact, not even at the start, before the start. So he gets his cooldown reduction as normal. He gets to take his turn as normal. No bother to him. And a speed in all battles aura. Fabian is bonkers. It was the big debate at the time, right? When he came out, Arman's was so overpowered. Is Fabian as good as Arman's? How could anyone be as good as Arman's? Funny enough now, a year later, looking back on it, Arman's has really been punished quite hard. He's certainly fallen off, whereas Fabian has still remained on top and is regularly a first pick champion in Live Arena to this day because he is that busted. Next up then, we've got two mythicals, and probably unsurprising, if Arman's is the best, if Fabian is the best legendary, you could probably guess the theme of the two mythicals as well for best control. Crixia. Remove all buffs and increase all enemy skill cooldowns by 3 turns. Beautiful stuff. One of the gear sets that counter, it's a gear set specifically designed to counter increasing enemy skills. It's the Chronophage set. It gives you a buff. I think it's immutable. I always get confused, but there's so many buffs now. I think it's immutable, but it prevents per buff stack 1 instance of your skills being put on cooldown. But Crixia, because she removes all buffs first, she actually removes that and can still lock you out. Now, people will sometimes run 4-piece Chronophage, 4-piece Mercurial to try to prevent this hit from doing the buff removal with the Total Guard stack, and then the Chronophage set will prevent the cooldown increase. That's a pretty niche strategy, but very, very effective. Worth considering if you're fighting lots of Crixias. Anyway, in broad strokes, this is incredibly strong. Her one sort of downside back in the day was that the buff removal could trigger polymorph and she get turned into a sheep before the cooldowns were increased. But polymorph is just far less common because, again, they never really nerfed it. Not properly anyway, in my opinion. They just added far more OP stuff to counter it and make it irrelevant, such as Total Guard, Wand of Submission, etc. Got loads of other stuff as well. Turn meter pushback, block buffs, decrease resist. And yeah, then her alternate form, this is the big thing. She is a mythical. So let's say she gets her skills put on cooldown. Her whole team, let's say if Fabian is faster than a Crixia, her whole team's skills are on cooldown. No problem. Metamorph, remove all debuffs, and then reset everyone's cooldown. Well, decrease them by 3 turns. Incredibly effective. And then she's got great buffs as well. Sort of the mirror of her base form. Fantastic base stats as well. And yes, that mythical nature that she can do both. Extremely versatile, very powerful. Funny enough, she's actually got stronger over time because of Mercurial gear in particular has pushed her up to be even better as just a consistent counter to champions who can be locked out, and also in her alternate form, a counter to champions who do lock you out of abilities. Then the final pick I'm going to go for is Sabrael the Distant. She's brand new. People liking her. Again, funny enough, she's not that good in non-PvP content, but my goodness, is she a monster in PvP. Ridiculous aura for Arena, but she comes in, double hit, increase the cooldown of 1 skill to the maximum, and push their turn meter back as well, and get an extra turn. Okay, cool. So double hit. I am curious. My suspicion, of course, is that they'll bring out like Void Mythicals later this year, and that they might have multiple skills, like 3 active skills per form or something silly to counter this, right? Again, I just go, how would they this seems really overpowered. What will they do to fix it? Obviously, release something even more overpowered in the future. So yeah, Void Mythicals, maybe they'll have 5 active skills. I don't know. They can freely metamorph several times per turn. Who knows? What ridiculousness we'll see. But yeah, it's a double hit and very consistent lockout. Now, one downside, if she's the wrong affinity, if she's fighting magic affinity champions, you might weak hit on both hits. Even if you get one weak hit, but you land one hit, you'll increase one of their skills, but it will be at random. So maybe you do increase the skill that's really important. On the other hand, maybe you don't. Maybe you actually miss that. That could be a downside. And a huge thing about her as well, so she's got the double hit, increasing skills, but it's the extra turn. Then she can go into a double hit, steal all buffs, and then take all buffs from her and put them on her whole team. Or she can go into her alternate form, and she can do a double hit, hitting really hard, decreasing Stone Skin shields, magma shields, and then hitting really hard and giving herself a protected shield. She's a massive damage dealer in her alternate form. It's very powerful. But the biggest thing about her is, does she counter Stone Skin, one of the most common arena sets? Yes, she can increase skills past the Stone Skin, flip forms, reduce the Stone Skin, and potentially even kill champions through it. Does she counter Mercurial, the new hot set for PvP? Yes, because she gets double hit, extra turn double hit. You can have 3 stacks of total guard from Mercurial at the start of the fight. She removes all 3 and even lands a hit past it as well. Absolutely insane. Almost a perfectly designed counter to the 2 most common defensive sets in PvP, full stop. Incredible. She's also, by the way, just spamming out sleeps. Whenever an enemy at the highest turn meter, whenever a turn meter increases, she's just gonna go and sleep their highest turn meter enemy. So she's spamming out A1s like crazy. It's nutty. Boosting her team's damage. She does so much in her alternate form. Big hits. She can ignore block damage on unkillable and activate it for free when cheat death or block damage or unkillable happens. Yeah, we got an example, by the way, of the always critical against enemies with any skills on cooldown. So you could potentially forsake crit rate entirely. She is really good. You might be shocked to hear she's really, really good. So there you go. Those are my 10 picks for the best control champions in the game. I do think increasing skill cooldowns is the best, certainly for PvP. It is the best option. I'd say stun then is the other incredibly strong one. And that could be even better in PvE, where you can more reliably land it. It's more difficult to land it in PvP, but stun is particularly powerful because it stops skills cooling down at the start of the turn, and obviously you miss the full turn. True Fear can last a couple of turns, somewhat commonly now. Provoke can last a couple of turns as well. It's pretty interesting. Let me know who I left out, because like I said, I feel like it's a quarter to a third of what you're looking for in this game are control type champions. So there's tons of variety in the types of champions you could use. You might be looking at someone like the Nergigante Archer or Solus for like those provokes and that PvE performance. Yeah, I don't know. There's plenty, as I said, that I've left out. Let me know who you would pick. And yeah, any tips or insights you guys have on control. That's it. My top 10 across all rarity champions. Top 10 picks for control champs in the game and some insight into control in general. Hope you enjoyed, found it interesting or helpful. And yeah, thanks for watching. I will see you next time. Goodbye.